When my premature son was born, the NICU became our second home, a place I thought was built on trust, compassion, and unshakable professionalism. But one quiet afternoon, I walked in to find him lying in his incubator without a blanket, his tiny body trembling. The nurse on duty froze when I asked a simple question: who cared for him last? Her hands shook, her voice faltered, and in that moment I knew something had happened in that room that no one wanted to tell me. As I dug deeper, every visit to the NICU revealed another unsettling detail, until the truth threatened to unravel the very system I had trusted to keep my baby alive. Remember the sound of the NICU before I even opened the door that day. The steady rhythm of machines, the occasional beeping alarms, the hushed voices of nurses moving quickly but quietly. It was a sound I'd grown used to over the past 3 weeks, a soundtrack to the most fragile chapter of my life. But when I stepped inside, something felt different. The room seemed colder, not just in temperature but in atmosphere, as if the air itself had tightened around me. My eyes went straight to my son's incubator. His tiny arms were curled in close to his chest, his skin slightly mottled, and he had no blanket. Not the thin hospital-issue one, not the soft one I'd brought from home with little blue stars, nothing. My heart slammed against my ribs. I'd been told warmth was everything for premature babies, that any drop in temperature could be dangerous. I glanced around for the nurse on duty. She stood by the monitors, her hands moving over a clipboard. Why doesn't he have a blanket? My voice came out sharper than I intended, slicing through the quiet hum of the room. She looked up, and for a moment, she didn't speak. Her eyes darted toward the incubator, then back to me, and I saw it, a flicker of panic. Her fingers tightened around the pen, and her knuckles whitened. Who cared for him last? I asked. She swallowed hard. I'll check the chart, she stammered, but she didn't move. That hesitation sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. I stepped closer, my mind racing. Had something happened? Had they made a mistake? Or worse, had someone hurt him? She finally placed the pen down, but instead of reaching for the chart, she glanced toward the far end of the NICU, where another nurse stood frozen mid-task, watching us. It was subtle, but I caught it, a silent exchange between them. My gut told me I wasn't going to get a straight answer. I reached through the small opening in the incubator to adjust my son's position, feeling the coolness of his skin. That was when I noticed a faint red mark along his arm, thin but fresh. What's this? I demanded, pointing. The nurse's mouth opened, but no words came. She looked toward the other nurse again, and I saw her lips form the smallest shake of the head. My pulse pounded in my ears. I'm his mother, I said, my voice trembling now. You tell me what happened. Instead of answering, she took a step back. I'll get the charge nurse, she whispered, as if even speaking too loudly might trigger something. She turned and left the room without another word, leaving me alone with my son in a silence that suddenly felt dangerous. My mind was already spiraling. If they were hiding something, how far would they go to keep it buried? And if the charge nurse was involved, would I get the truth, or a carefully crafted lie? I pulled the blanket from my bag and tucked it around my baby, promising him under my breath that I'd protect him, no matter what it took. I didn't realize then that I'd just stepped into a battle much bigger than I imagined. Because when the charge nurse finally appeared in the doorway, her expression wasn't one of concern, it was of someone who had been expecting this moment. And she was ready for me. The charge nurse stepped into the NICU with the kind of measured calm that felt rehearsed. Her posture was perfect, her face composed, but her eyes, they were scanning me the way you might assess a threat. I hear you have concerns, she said, voice low and smooth, as if we were discussing the weather. I didn't waste time. Yes. My son had no blanket. He was cold. There's a mark on his arm. And the nurse wouldn't tell me who was caring for him. Her gaze flicked toward the incubator, then back to me. She didn't even look at the red mark. Sometimes babies kick their blankets off, she offered. And marks like that can happen from the floor or from his own movement. I shook my head. You're telling me you don't know who was responsible for him today? All our babies are cared for by the entire team, she replied, the words sliding out like they'd been memorized. It wasn't an answer. She was trying to control the narrative before I could push further. I could feel my blood pressure rising. The other nurse, the one who had been watching earlier, suddenly busied herself with the monitor at the far end, her back to us, though I could see her shoulders stiffen. The room had gone quiet again, except for the mechanical beeps and hums. I stepped closer to the charge nurse, lowering my voice. I'm not going to forget this, I said. I'm not going to let it go. So you'd better decide whether you want to tell me the truth now or later, because I will find out. Her lips tightened, just barely, and she finally glanced at the other nurse before speaking. Why don't we step outside to talk? It wasn't a suggestion. She was already moving toward the door, expecting me to follow. I hesitated, looking at my son. Leaving him felt wrong, but staying here in front of the others would only get me vague half-answers. I followed her into a narrow hallway, away from the NICU's main floor. The door shut behind us, muting the sounds of the machines. She leaned against the wall, arms crossed. We've had some staffing challenges, she began, her tone clipped. We're doing the best we can. I frowned. Staffing challenges don't explain why a nurse freezes when I ask who cared for my child. Or why my baby was left cold. Sometimes, she said slowly, families misunderstand what they see. NICU care is complex. It's easy to make assumptions. I stared at her, realizing this was her strategy, make me doubt my own eyes. But I knew what I saw. And I wasn't going to be gaslit in the one place I needed to trust the most. I opened my mouth to push back when a sound broke through the hallway, a muffled cry from the NICU, followed by hurried footsteps. The charge nurse straightened. Immediately, her eyes darting toward the door. Without a word, she brushed past me and went back inside. My stomach dropped. I followed, my heart hammering. As I re-entered the NICU, I saw the other nurse leaning over my son's incubator, adjusting something on his arm. The monitor beside him was flashing a yellow warning I hadn't seen before. What's going on? I demanded. The nurse looked up, startled, then froze again. The charge nurse slipped in beside her, blocking my view. He's fine, she said quickly, too quickly. Just a routine adjustment. But then I caught it, the faintest trace of something on the nurse's glove. A smear of red. My son's blood. And the way the nurse's hands were shaking told me it was anything but routine. I stepped forward, but the charge nurse placed herself squarely between me and the incubator. You need to step back, she said, her voice suddenly firm. It was the first time her composure cracked. I didn't move. In that tense moment, I knew two things for certain: they weren't telling me everything, and whatever they were hiding was happening right now. And I wasn't about to be kept in the dark any longer. I didn't step back. I couldn't. My instinct screamed that every second I stood behind the charge nurse was another second something might be happening to my child without my knowledge. Move, I said, my voice low but sharp. The charge nurse didn't budge. We're in the middle of a sterile procedure. If you want to stay, you'll need to wait until it's complete. My eyes flicked to the monitor beside the incubator. The yellow alert was still flashing, accompanied by a faint, rhythmic beep that was different from the others in the room. What's that alarm? I pressed. The charge nurse's jaw tightened. It's nothing concerning. That was the wrong answer. I knew enough from weeks of watching these machines that an alarm never meant nothing. I shifted to the side, trying to see past her, but she mirrored my movements like a wall that moved with me. Behind her, the younger nurse's hands trembled as she adjusted a band on my son's arm, the same spot where the fresh red mark had been. And then I saw it, a discarded syringe on the small tray beside her. "What are you giving him?" My voice rose now, sharp enough to make a few other nurses glance our way. "You're not allowed to inject anything without notifying me first." The younger nurse froze. The charge nurse turned halfway toward her, murmuring something I couldn't hear. The younger nurse nodded quickly, her eyes wide. That's when I realized I wasn't just fighting for answers, I was fighting against a united front. My breath came fast, and my heart felt like it was trying to tear its way out of my chest. I thought of the cameras. I had noticed them weeks ago, small black domes in the corners of the NICU ceiling. "I want to see the footage from today," I said, my voice steady despite the panic boiling inside me. The charge nurse didn't even pretend to consider it. "Families don't have access to those recordings," she said. "That's for internal review only." I stepped closer, closing the distance between us until there were only inches between our faces. "Then you'd better start an internal review right now. Because if I don't get answers, I will be calling the hospital director and the police within the hour." For the first time, she hesitated. It was brief, a flash of calculation in her eyes, but I caught it. She glanced at the younger nurse again, and in that moment, I knew there was something on that footage they didn't want me to see. Before she could respond, the NICU doors swung open and a man in a suit walked in. His presence instantly shifted the energy in the room. The nurses straightened, their movements sharper, quieter. He carried a clipboard but didn't look at it. His eyes went straight to me. "I'm Daniel Price, Hospital Administration," he said, extending a hand I didn't take. "I hear we have a concerned parent." The charge nurse's shoulders seemed to relax as if she had just been rescued. "This is the baby's mother," she said, stepping aside so he could take her place in front of me. Daniel's smile was professional but cold, the kind that says I'm here to manage this problem, not solve it. "Why don't we speak in my office?" he offered. I shook my head. "No. I'm not leaving my son." He glanced at the monitor beside the incubator, then at the younger nurse, who gave the smallest nod. "Your baby is stable," he said smoothly. "But for his safety, and yours, it's best we discuss this somewhere private." I felt trapped. Leaving meant losing sight of my son. Staying meant getting stonewalled by the very people I suspected of hiding something. Before I could decide, the yellow alert on the monitor switched to red. A sharp alarm blared through the NICU, and the younger nurse gasped. Daniel's expression hardened. "Get her out," he ordered. And in that instant, I realized they were going to remove me by force if they had to. Two security guards appeared almost instantly, as if they'd been waiting outside for the signal. They didn't touch me at first, just stood there, wide-shouldered and silent, blocking my path back to the incubator. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us," one said in a tone that was calm but immovable. I shook my head, planting my feet. "I'm not leaving my baby." Behind them, the younger nurse was frantically adjusting tubes and wires, her hands moving fast but without confidence. The red alarm blared steadily, a sound that now felt like it was drilling straight into my spine. Daniel Price stepped closer, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "You are interfering with critical care. If you stay, you put your child at greater risk. Do you understand?" The way he said it made my blood run cold, not because I believed him, but because it sounded like a warning. I looked past him, locking eyes with my son. He was so small, his chest rising and falling under the mask, the blanket I'd placed earlier still tucked around him. Every instinct told me to fight, to tear through them and reach him, but I also knew that if I was removed by force, they could spin the story however they wanted. Slowly, I raised my phone, pretending to check the time but really hitting record. I'll go, I said, my voice trembling just enough to be believable. Daniel nodded toward the guards, and they stepped aside, letting me walk toward the NICU doors. But instead of heading to his office, I paused at the glass, keeping my phone angled toward the incubator. I caught a glimpse of the younger nurse pulling something from a pocket, a small, unlabeled vial, and connecting it to a line on my son's fore. My stomach lurched. The charge nurse was watching her, not stopping her. I bit the inside of my cheek hard to stop myself from reacting. The glass was soundproof, but I could still hear the rhythm of the alarm in my head as I followed Daniel down the hall. His office was small, with a single window overlooking the hospital parking lot. He closed the door, then took a seat behind the desk. "I understand you're upset," he began. "But in a high-stress environment like the NICU, emotions can cloud judgment." I leaned forward. "I know what I saw. I know my baby was left cold. I know there was an injection without my consent. And I know your staff is hiding something." He didn't flinch. "What you think you saw could be a misinterpretation. Sometimes treatments need to happen quickly. We can't always pause to get approval." "So you admit there was an injection," I said. His eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I saw a crack in his polished demeanor. "I didn't say that." He shifted in his chair. "Look, we're doing our best here. If you want to transfer your son to another facility, we can start that paperwork." It sounded like a solution, but I knew better. It was a way to move us quietly out before I asked more questions. I sat back, pretending to consider it, while my phone kept recording from the pocket of my sweater. "Before I decide," I said slowly, "I want a copy of his full medical chart from today. Every note, every entry, every medication." Daniel smiled faintly, but his eyes stayed hard. "That's not something we can give you immediately." I let the silence stretch between us until he finally stood. "I'll see what I can do," he said, but I could tell he had no intention of getting me that chart. As I left his office, my phone buzzed with a notification. The recording had automatically uploaded to my cloud. Relief mixed with dread. I had proof now, but proof of what exactly? I didn't know yet. Back in the NICU hallway, I stopped short. The blinds on the NICU windows had been drawn, blocking my view. My heart sank. They didn't want me to see what was happening inside. That was when I heard it, the sudden, sharp sound of a monitor flatlining. The flatline sound pierced through the hallway, an unbroken note that made every nerve in my body scream. I lunged toward the NICU doors, but the same two security guards were there, stepping into my path like shadows. "Move!" I shouted, my voice shaking with panic. One of them lifted a hand, his expression blank. "You can't go in right now." Behind them, through the narrow crack of the door before it fully closed, I caught a flash of movement. 3 nurses clustered around my son's incubator, their bodies blocking the view of his tiny frame. I could see the charge nurse's lips moving fast, issuing orders, and the younger nurse working frantically with some piece of equipment. My heart was hammering so hard I thought I might collapse. I pressed my palm to the door, trying to push past, but the guard's grip closed around my arm, firm and unyielding. "For your safety," he repeated like a robot. I twisted free, slamming my fist against the glass. "That's my baby. I have the right to be in there." But they didn't move. They didn't even look at me. The seconds dragged, each one louder than the last, until finally the alarm cut off. The silence that followed was worse. My knees almost gave out. Then the doors opened, and Daniel Price emerged. His tie was loosened now, his hair slightly out of place, the first sign that whatever had just happened inside wasn't routine. He didn't meet my eyes. "He's stable," he said, but there was no warmth in his tone, no reassurance. "You can see him now." I rushed past him into the NICU, my eyes darting straight to the incubator. My son was there, his chest rising. In shallow, uneven breaths, a new bandage on his arm where the mark had been. The blanket I'd brought was gone again, replaced by a standard hospital one. I leaned down, whispering to him, telling him I was there, that he was safe. But I couldn't ignore the way the younger nurse avoided my gaze, her face pale, her eyes glassy. I straightened, turning to the charge nurse. "What happened?" She didn't answer. She just busied herself with a clipboard. "Tell me," I said again, my voice low, dangerous now. Finally, she spoke, her words clipped. "There was a complication. He's fine now." It wasn't enough. It wasn't even close. I reached into my sweater pocket and tapped my phone screen, stopping the recording I'd kept running since Daniel's office. "You're all going to explain this," I said. "Every second of it. Because I have everything saved, and I will make sure someone listens." Daniel had followed me back inside. "If you take this public," he said softly, "you'll only hurt your son. The stress, the attention, do you really want that for him?" It was a threat wrapped in concern, and I saw it for exactly what it was. I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled the blanket from my bag, the one with the blue stars, and tucked it back around my baby. His tiny fingers curled weakly around the edge. I felt the weight of every nurse's eyes on me, but I didn't care. I had proof now. Proof that something wasn't right. Proof they were afraid of me having. And as I stood there, I made a silent promise: they had just made an enemy of the wrong mother. What they didn't know yet was that I wasn't going to stop. Not until I found out exactly what they had done to my child. And not until every single person involved had to answer for it.